Arco Arena will forever be my home. The former arena for the Sacramento Kings set to be torn down here shortly, and my memories will stay strong even if the foundations are ripped apart. That building is truly the birthplace, not just of my Sacramento Kings fandom, but of my love for professional sports. I would not be who I am and where I am without the memories and joy that I experienced in that building. So, as a final farewell on today's Locked On Kings podcast, I'll share with you some of my favorite memories and stories from growing up in that arena as a young Kings fan to starting my career in professional sports journalism as a young reporter. It's all on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January through December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been covering the Sacramento Kings now for 8 seasons. Yes, I started covering the Kings when they were still playing in Arco Arena, or Sleep Train Arena, as it is called, but really not truly known as. And I'm currently working for ABC 10 News and Television covering the Sacramento Kings. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. And I like to, even though some media members frown upon this and others think that you can't really cover the team that you love, or you shouldn't cover the team that you love because there's always a bias there. In my case, I wear my Kings fandom like a proud badge that I show off to everybody, because this environment, this city, this organization, this team, I know means so much to so many people because it's meant so much to me, just like that building, Arco Arena in Natomas, means so much to me. And as we are preparing for that building to be torn down, the site that they're turning into a massive hospital and medical facility, which I think is wonderful for the city of Sacramento. Of course, I'm sad to see the building torn down. I thought that I'd take time here to say a fond farewell. I think I've done a podcast similar to this before when the Kings actually left Arco Arena and went into the Golden One Center. And believe me, as much as I love the Golden One Center for how beautiful that building is, how state-of-the-art it is, and I truly don't take it for granted. What it's already done for downtown Sacramento is going to continue to do for downtown Sacramento. I absolutely adore that building, but nothing for me can ever top what Arco Arena was and is. Like Arco Arena, when I drive past it, there is a little sadness knowing that it's an empty building and that it's going to be torn down. But that building to me will always mean so much, and I will always be thankful for the time that I got to spend in that building. And simply, when I think of Arco Arena, so many different things come to mind. But honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is smell. Because I remember as a kid, my uncle, who was a season ticket holder for many years, he took me to all the Kings games that I went to as a kid. And it's his fault that I tell him all the time. It's your fault that, one, I became a Kings fan, and two, that I got into the career that I'm in, because he was the one that would always take me and really open that door to me. But I remember walking through the doors of the whatever entrance I went into Arco Arena, and the first thing that hits you is the smell of churros. I don't know if it was like that for anybody else, but as a kid, that always stuck with me. That concourse, the purple concourse, pretty thin concourse that surrounded the entire arena with the black curtains that cut off the section so you could hear the roar and hear the excitement happening, but you couldn't quite see. Not like how open it is at the Golden One Center. It was a massive hallway that surrounded the entire arena, and you would just go and see all the food courts, see the amount of people walking shoulder to shoulder, excited to get to their seats, see the painted murals of past, present, and Sacramento Kings. You see the great team store, but it's the smell, the distinct smell to me of churros and popcorn that always stuck with me as a kid. It was that smell of, like, everybody has their favorite candle, or like when you walk into your house or walk into a girlfriend's house or wife's house, or a wife's family's house or your mom's house. It has that distinct smell, right? That's what Arco Arena had for me, that smell of churros. And then you'd walk past those black curtains. You'd walk through onto the kind of rickety metal / wood stairs that would take you down to the court, and you would see just a sea of uncomfortable plastic blue and red seats. If you were ever fortunate enough to sit close enough to the court to sit in the red seats, you knew you had it made. But the blue seats everywhere, the skinny aisles, the terrible LED lights or whatever they were called at that time that would line the stairs. So when they would turn the lights out for pregame and pregame festivities and things like that, that would be the only thing lighting the building, and you still couldn't really see where you were standing, how the place would shake when it would get too chaotic and too crazy. I remember a lot of Kings fans will remember this, the fake flames that they had coming out of the corners of the old tiny jumbotron over the top of the court. Now they had the lights along the corners. You remember the lights that would be synonymous with the volume in the arena. And as the volume got louder, they'd turn the lights up more and more until the lights got to the Kings logo at the top. It would light up, and then that little flame fabric would come out the top as if it was classic Arco Thunder, right? So many things immediately flood into my brain, just little tiny things about Arco Arena. Of course, how loud that building got, and how my mom would ask my uncle to have me wear earplugs when I was a kid because it would be so loud. She didn't want it to damage my hearing. And of course, my uncle didn't care that as soon as I left the house, I took those whatever, the earplugs or headphones, over the ear headphones that she would give me, and I'd toss them aside and I'd go in and experience the volume of the goal or the of Arco Arena and Arco Thunder for what it was. And it was truly that volume that stuck with me. So I have a few stories that I wanted to share of my time at Arco Arena, from my first game to starting as a young sports journalist who's trying to break into the industry that I'm in now, and my memories of doing that inside of Arco Arena. But this is not just story time with Matt. I want to make sure you're sending your stories and sharing your stories. So please, if you have any stories, if you're watching on YouTube, leave those stories down in the YouTube comment section below. If you want to send those stories to me on Twitter, you can at MattGeorgeSack. If you want to email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. I want to hear and read your stories, your memories of Arco Arena, because I know I'm not the only one who has so much of his heart in that building, and that building meant so much too. But I distinctly remember so many things. Even though I was 6 years old, I distinctly remember my uncle taking me to my first ever Kings game. It was Kings versus Clippers, and it was a night that, like, three things stick with me with this night in particular. Number one is I was extremely confused about defense chants. And I remember turning to my uncle, and actually there was someone who was sitting like a few rows in front of us and to my right. His season tickets were like the bench side of the arena, pretty close to center court. He had amazing tickets. He wasn't close. He was towards the back of the lower bowl, just in front of the suites. And there was a fan who had a white D, and then a fan who had a picket fence. And I, at 6 years old, knew what a fence was, knew what the letter D was, had no idea why so many people were chanting a letter and then a fence. And I remember talking to my uncle about that and him explaining to me what defense meant and how it took a little while for it to actually stick. But I joined right into the chants right away because, heck, the energy was fun. The extra energy was palpable, and I wanted to join in immediately at 6 years old. That's one of the first things I remember. One of the things that also jumps off the page to me, that is the night that I fell in love with Jason Williams, because I don't know if it was Williams' rookie season. I don't know when it was, but J. Will was my first ever favorite NBA player. And he just enamored me, wowed me, as he wowed so many people with the way that he played the game, how flashy he was, how fun he was, how exciting he was, how the crowd would react to him. That always stuck with me. So number 55, the first ever jersey that I owned, the first ever poster of a player that I owned, my favorite player ever, until Mike Bibby came around. Then Mike Bibby truly became my favorite player ever. But J. Will, watching him that first game against the Clippers really stuck out to me too. And then just the sheer volume and energy of the place that left me just wanting to come back time and time again, to the point where I would harass and hound my uncle, asking him when he would take me back to my next Kings game. And I was very spoiled as a kid, truly spoiled to be able to go to as many Kings games as I went to. Like no kid should have been able to go to as many Kings games as I did. Like I probably went to over 100 games in Arco Arena from 6 years old to age 18 or when the arena finally closed or whenever the hell that was. Like I grew up in that arena experiencing so many games. Now, it's important to note I have never was able to go and actually watch a playoff game. I still, to this day, at 27 years old, I have never been to an NBA playoff game live. I have had opportunities to cover the Warriors when they were hosting their playoff games, and I actively chose not to because as long as I'm still here in Sacramento, as long as my career hasn't taken me to cover another team, I want my first NBA playoff experience to be when the Sacramento Kings finally do make the playoffs, which who knows if I'll still be alive whenever that happens. But I never got to experience playoff basketball inside Arco Arena. And I know there are so many of you who did. And if you want to share those memories, please do. And I know there are multiple people who have reached out to me who were there for Game 5, Mike Bibby's game winner in the 2002 playoffs. And there's so many people that have experienced Kings playoff basketball in that arena. And while I can never say that I did get that experience, I've experienced things pretty close to that because as many of you know who went to Arco Arena Kings games back during that heyday, every single game, whether it was a 7:00 tip on a Monday night or a matinee Sunday performance, every single game was packed and was loud. Every single game. Arco Thunder was feared by the rest of the league and adored by the players and the staff and the coaches and everybody who was here. Teams loved and hated coming to Arco Arena because they knew that the atmosphere was going to be as special as it was. And that will always stick with me as a fan. One of my coolest memories ever as a young Kings fan was when my uncle took me to just a random Kings game in the middle of the season. And at that time, before the game started, they would send the Sacramento Kings dance team out and they would give ticket upgrades every once in a while to people. And I must have been like 8 or 9 years old. It wasn't that old at all. And we got the tickets. One of the dancers handed these tickets and they ended up being basically on the floor, courtside seat tickets, except they weren't like on Kings Row. They were in the corner on the baseline behind one of the baskets, but right on the corner next to the Kings bench. So I was sitting in the last chair in that corner with the bench just to the right of me. And I remember paying more attention to the bench than the actual game on this particular night because those guys were so close. And what sticks out to me, and I know I've told this story on Locked On Kings before, what I always will remember is Chris Webber checking out of a game and getting treatment or getting stretched out. And instead of sitting on the bench, he sat on the floor in our corner, and athletic trainer Pete Youngman is stretching him out. And he leans back and he's leaning on my legs. And I'm like, again, I'm tiny. This is massive Chris Webber, basically a god in Sacramento. And I just stared at the back of his head for as long as he was there. He never said anything to me. I don't even think he realized he was leaning on me. My uncle was taking pictures as much as possible because it's Chris freaking Webber that's touching me. And then he gets up and he goes back to the bench or goes back into the game or whatever. And I'm wearing jeans. My jeans are soaked. Like the man was so sweaty that my jeans are just absolutely soaked and I could care less. I think I remember telling my mom not to wash the jeans when I got home. But that's one of my favorite King stories to tell. And I still have so many stories to tell, including the night where the Kings celebrated Vlade Divac's birthday, the night where Bobby Jackson absolutely took over. I have to talk about that. I have to talk about a season ticket holder event that my uncle took me to where I had dinner on the floor with Jerry Reynolds and then head coach Reggie Theus. So many great stories that I still want to share that happened in that wonderful Arco Arena. And again, send me your stories and your memories. I would love to read them and hear about them. But right now, I want to make sure you know about a new sponsor here of the Locked On Kings podcast. I'm talking about Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens is something that with one delicious scoop, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all of these things. And look, the best thing for me about Athletic Greens, and they sent us a package not too long ago, tried it, loved it immediately, is it helps support better sleep quality. And for someone like me who works way early hours in the morning after staying up late watching Kings games and hosting podcasts, sometimes I don't get the sleep and the rest that I need that's healthy for my body. Athletic Greens doesn't solve that problem for me, but they certainly help. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. And like I said, it supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. It's the one thing that will best everything else. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iterations and third-party testing. Athletic Greens, to make it easy, is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I will never forget being at Arco Arena, this time with my mom, as she took me to the game that just so happened to be Vlade Divac's birthday. And Vlade Divac was my mom's favorite player growing up. So it was extra special to be there with her. We had no idea. We just went to the game. And what I remember most about this game is, one, Vlade had a good night. Two, the entire arena saying happy birthday to him. Again, this was right in the heyday. It must have been like either 2001, 2002, 2003. It was like right in the center of the heyday, glory days of Sacramento Kings basketball. And I remember, and I'm sure it was a total bit, but it doesn't matter. To me as a kid, it looked like a genuine mistake that made me cry from laughing so hard. They brought a cake down to the floor for Vlade. Of course, it's mid-game. He's not going to eat it or anything. And they walk literally right past us. My mom and I were close to the aisle, and they walk right past our section, walking down to the floor. Slamson's carrying the cake and has a Sacramento Kings dancer behind him. And in true klutzy Slamson fashion, he trips, throws the cake over his shoulders, and it nails the dancer right in the face. And this happened right in front of us. Unfortunately, none of the cake got on me. But I remember that moment distinctly. I remember the reaction of everybody around. At least I thought it was real, and everybody was concerned, checking on the dancer to make sure she was okay. The rest of the arena was absolutely busting up laughing, and it happened right in front of me. So for some reason, that moment in Vlade Divac's birthday game always stuck with me. And this is completely unrelated, but there was also a game, and I have no idea who it was against. It might have been against the Rockets, I want to say, with Yao Ming playing, and I got to see Yao play a couple of times in person. But Vlade hit his first ever 3 as a King or something like that. And I remember distinctly Peja Stojakovic jumping into his arms and Vlade basically carrying him back up the floor. It was a pretty cool moment that has always stuck with me too. And another game that I loved I remember this game distinctly. The Kings were taking on the New Jersey Nets. And this was the New Jersey Nets when they had Vince Carter and Jason Kidd, like a really good Nets team. And on this particular night, the Kings were destroying the Nets. Like, it was a complete blowout. And Bobby Jackson was coming off the bench and having the game of his life. I have no idea how many points he scored. It was an explosive performance. I think in one quarter, he just went supernova. He wouldn't miss a shot. And at this time, my uncle actually had left me to go to the bathroom. And so I'm sitting there watching this by myself at like whatever I was. I couldn't have been more than like 10, 11 years old. And suddenly with the game that Bobby was having, an entire Bobby Jackson, like Bobby chant fills Arco. And I, of course, join in on it. And right then my uncle taps me on the shoulder. He had come back from the team store where he bought this little plush Bobby Jackson doll that I actually still have. It's not behind me. It should be. It's somewhere in a box in my garage, but I still do have this little plush Bobby Jackson doll / action figure that I've actually showed to Bobby before when I got to do radio with him on KHTK. So that game will always stick to me too. And the sound of Bobby, the Bobby chants ringing through Arco Arena, plenty of times that Bobby and other players were chanted about, and how loud that building got with the 17,000 that were in there. And then, not a game experience, but a very special experience that I always remember. And I've told Jerry Reynolds this story too. My uncle got invited to an exclusive season ticket holder event. And it was a dinner on the court with then head coach Reggie Theus and Jerry Reynolds. And Jerry at that time was working for the Kings. I can't remember exactly what he was doing, but he was also the TV analyst, of course. And I sat almost right next to Jerry, and it was this really long table. They dimmed the lights in Arco Arena. We sat on this really long table, had a meal cooked for us by the personal chefs of the Maloofs. The Maloofs weren't there, and it was about maybe 40 or 50 people or so, different season ticket holders at this table. And Jerry was so nice. Reggie was too, took pictures with me and everything, but Jerry was so nice to me, spent most of the evening talking just to me, asking me questions about basketball. We talked Kings basketball, and Jerry's just, he's the greatest human on the planet. So he, in so many ways, inspired me to get into this industry as well. And I loved, of course, growing up, listening to him and all his Jerryisms on TV. So to be able to sit next to him, and I was wide-eyed staring at him the entire time, and be able to have a long conversation with him, for him to spend as much time specifically with me as he did in that event, that will always stick with me. And that happened on the floor of Arco Arena. But then I got older. And when I got older, I started to be able to do things with my Kings fandom by myself that I never got to experience, of course, as a kid. And I was excited to experience by myself, taking myself to games, buying my own tickets, going to games with friends, driving myself to the Arco Arena. It was then like Power Balance Pavilion, a sleep train by that time. I'll tell those stories, plus what it was like inside Arco Arena as an actual journalist breaking into the business, after I tell you about Bet Online. There were a lot of great memories, of course, in Arco Arena. A lot of people, I'm sure, made money off of games that happened in Arco Arena, but Bet Online, I don't think, was around when that was going on. And if you want the absolute best place for sports gambling, to make money, a safe place to get quick withdrawals, Bet Online is the perfect place for you. It's that time of year again. College basketball's tournament finally upon us. Of course, all the NBA action too. And for all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. Bet Online remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. Bet Online is your continued source for all sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and even your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at Bet Online, where the game starts. When I was 16 years old, 16, 17, right around then, I had the opportunity to repay my uncle minorly for all of the Kings games that he took me to when I was a kid. And at this point in time, my uncle was no longer a season ticket holder. The Kings, of course, weren't any good. This was well into the start of this long playoff drought that, yes, we're still unfortunately in. But this night I wanted to take him to, because it was Chris Webber's retirement night, unforgettable night. And I bought us lower bowl tickets, spent a lot of my allowance at that time, or my early job money. I don't remember when it was exactly. But to be able to take him to this game. And that was very fun for me to be able to treat him after all the amazing games that he took me to, and for us to be there to celebrate Chris Webber and all the former Kings that had come back and were in the building for that. That was really special for me. And that was not the first or the last time, or that was the first and not the last time that I took my uncle, my mom, a lot of people to Kings games. In fact, I had to oftentimes buy tickets to convince people to go and watch the Kings with me, with how bad they were during those years. But I remember one game I could not get anybody to go with me, and this was right in the heat of the Here We Stay era. And or maybe it was a little bit before that. No, it was right in the heat of the Goon Squad era. That's what it was. If you remember, the Goon Squad was the Dante Green and Jason Thompson led it. It was the group on the Kings bench that used to jump and dance and party before every single Kings game. And the entire corner section behind the Kings bench would also get involved. And I remember I wanted to go to an early season game and be a part of the Goon Squad. And I asked a couple friends if they wanted to go with me, and nobody could go with me. So this was the first game that I ever went by myself to a Kings game, bought a ticket, and just drove and went to it. I must have been 16, 17 years old. To experience a basketball game by yourself is something I wouldn't necessarily recommend. It's just kind of weird when it's just you, although a lot of people do just go by themselves, and all power to you. It was definitely different, But to be a part of the Goon Squad was fun. And I remember you could actually see my nerdy looking ass jumping up and down, having a good time right behind Sign Lady during the pregame tip off there, which is always fun. That was the first game that I ever went to by myself. And then getting to go to Arco Arena as a media member. Once I actually got into the business, to go into to actually be working in a place that I grew up in and to be doing what I had dreamed about doing for so many years. It started actually with an opportunity in high school. I went to Wood Creek High School in Roseville, California, and we had the opportunity to go to Kings Media Day. And I don't remember what year this was, but this was DeMarcus Cousins and Omri Cas. No, yeah, Omri was the year before. This was DeMarcus Cousins and Hassan Whiteside's rookie season. And Media Day was held in the basically like the suite entrance or the like court side entrance, the lower entrance by all the player locker rooms. That's where Media Day was held. And it was my first time getting to go into that building as a high schooler. And I think there are pictures of it on social media that I've posted, or I can post some again in the future, because I got to be involved in media scrums. And I remember being there with like a young James Ham, being there with a young Sean Cunningham, Jason Jones, like so many of the Kings media members that have been around forever. I was just a high school student who got to get involved in the scrums with them. And to be able to talk to some of these players, had a one-on-one interview with Dante Green, got to talk to Omri Caspi, got to talk to DeMarcus, got to talk to Hassan Whiteside, actually asked them questions, and we used it for like our high school newspaper, made a video of it. It was incredibly cool, an incredibly awesome experience for me. And that was just the beginning, because once I became an intern at KHTK and actually got the opportunity to go to games and cover games professionally, my first ever game was against the San Antonio Spurs. And it was a unique experience because I got to go courtside before the game and hang out and talk to all the media members that just stand around during shoot around, talk to some of the players, experience what it was like to do press conferences and things like that. But during the game itself, I actually went and worked in the San Antonio Spurs TV truck, which was just outside of the arena. And that's where I discovered the famous Clown Tunnel. If you're not familiar with the Clown Tunnel, ask James Ham about it. But it was this tunnel that went underneath or underground from Arco Arena to where they were trying to build the baseball field out there that never got completed, where the clowns would sleep in and stay in during the circus. It's creepy, it's terrifying, but it's real. I saw that for the first time, getting to be there beneath the arena and going out to work in the San Antonio Spurs truck, which is an incredibly unique experience. So I'm just blabbering at this point. There's so many great memories that I have about Arco Arena that I would just love to reminisce, and I'll do more, I'm sure, other times on the Locked On Kings podcast, or when it's just myself talking with some of you if you're interested in more stories. But those are the main ones that jump out to me that just make that building so incredibly special. And as sad as I'm going to be to see it go and see it torn down and not be able to see it driving past it on I-5, I'm thankful, so incredibly thankful, one, that they're turning it into a place that's going to help people like a hospital, and two, that I had the memories that I had there. So again, if you want to share with me some of your memories of your time at Arco Arena, growing up in Arco Arena like I did, experiencing it in a playoff atmosphere, I would love to hear those stories. Whatever it is, even if it's not just for basketball, even if you went there for like concerts and comedy events. Like I remember going to see Kevin Hart at Arco Arena with a couple friends of mine. One of my first indoor concerts was at Arco Arena. I went and saw the Black Keys and the Arctic Monkeys with some friends of mine in high school at that time. Like there are so many great things that happen inside of Arco Arena for so many people. And if you want to share those, again, send them to me at Matt George Sack on Twitter, email me mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your stories down in the YouTube comment section down below. Bit of a different podcast, I know. We'll get back to our normal programming here. The Sacramento Kings getting back in action tomorrow night. They have another couple tough matchups here to wrap up this really difficult homestand, this 4-game stretch the Kings have been through. Although I will say, with how they, of course, beat the Bulls and then how well they played the Milwaukee Bucks last night, overall, it's been an incredibly entertaining homestand, and I hope that continues tomorrow against the Celtics, and the Kings will play a matinee game against the Phoenix Suns, first place Phoenix Suns, on Sunday. So we'll get back to our normal Locked On Kings content then. I hope you enjoyed this kind of different podcast, this kind of storytelling podcast. If you want me to do more of these just with generic, maybe media stories that I've experienced, have other people on to tell their stories, I'd love to get Jerry Reynolds on in the near future and just talk to him about Arco Arena too. I'm going to try and do that. And others who have gotten to experience, maybe Gary Gerald as well, Jason Ross, guys that have spent so much time in that building. That would be fun to do. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen. As always, I appreciate you and appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.